Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Gemini Rising. I've got, for some reason, the song was double playing.
Oh,
just a moment here. Gemini
Rising. It'll be your YouTube playing in the background.
Natalie, could you introduce us while I figure that out?
I absolutely can. Welcome, everyone, to Gemini Rising. We are very excited, and when I say we, I mean my co-host and Wohlcke and myself, to have Amanda Ellis joining us for this episode. Welcome.
Hello, Natalie and Anne. Thank you so much for having me on. I was actually really enjoying that intro as well.
That is all Anne. She came up with the concept after we'd been sending childhood photos to each other. She was like, I have the perfect idea for an intro. And then she went and created it.
Yeah, very good.
And for those of the people who are here who haven't watched us before, because I have a suspicion some people came because of Amanda Ellis. And I just wanted to say our show is called Gemini Rising because both Natalie and I figured out that we are Gemini Risings, similar degrees of Gemini Rising. And it means that we like to ask a lot of questions. We're very curious about spirituality. And everybody is welcome, whether you're Gemini Rising, have Gemini placements, or whatever they are. But we just discovered this is something we love to do, is to talk to people about who they are and what sort of spiritual work they do. So having Amanda is sort of one of the first people I mentioned. Wasn't she, Natalie?
Yes. When we first started talking about this show, we were giving our bucket list, and Amanda was right up there.
Wow. Well, I'm very, thank you very much. Humbled by that.
So we named this episode in particular, we're curious about Metatron, because I know that was the first thing that I wondered about when I first watched your videos. And my mom, who may or may not be in the chat right now, was the first person who sent me a video about Metatron from someone else. And at that point I said, what is Metatron? Because the name is so, it sounds almost like a transformer or something.
It does.
Right? We don't think of an archangel. So I wondered if you'd tell us a little bit about who is Metatron.
Yeah, well, it's a good point that you make about his name, actually, because yes, with Sandalphon, he is the only other archangel that doesn't end with a EL. You think of Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, Uriel. It does sound quite robotic, doesn't it? It sounds very much other. But one thing I always remind people is that meta comes from, I believe, the Greek. It's Greek in origin, and it means to go beyond. So meta means to go beyond. And I think in many ways, that's what Metatron is trying to help us do, to go beyond our limitations, go beyond what we think is possible and that we can do, and to stretch out really and discover more about ourselves, more about the world. And the energy is such a vast one. It's quite hard to describe it just in a couple of sentences. But I think it's vital right now for anybody that is struggling with what's going on in the world, with all the changes that are happening, with whatever you want to call it, the awakening journey, the ascension process, your spiritual path, the collective path. Metatron helps to try to make sense of what is happening. And I actually wrote something down earlier because I thought you might ask me this question. And I've written down here, helpful to anybody that is just waking up, as well as people that are already awake. And in many ways, Metatron is an encyclopedia, or opens us to an encyclopedia of all that has been and is to be, and your role in it. So yes, very much linked into the Akashic records, but that's such a big term in its own right as well. It's more about just remembering the qualities that you've probably forgotten that you've even got, and trying to get you out of comfort zone, but also getting the world out of comfort zone as well. But to me, the Metatron energy is very much about being a guide, a mentor, and I would also say a friend as well, actually. The more that I've worked with his energy, which has been since about 2005 consciously, although I suspect a lot longer than that. And many people that find Metatron start to realize that actually this energy has been with them forever, really. Probably before birth also, because it links into past lives as well. But there's so many different strands. I don't sort of know which one you want me to focus on. Is there any one in particular that you think might be interesting to explore in this, before I keep carrying on, as it were?
Natalie, how about, I think Natalie was newest to this concept. So what do you think?
I'm happy to keep talking because I've only given a very brief introduction.
I'm happy for you to keep talking because I do have questions, but I'm happy for you to just go because you may be about to answer the questions that I would ask.
That's fine. Okay, so going back then to Metatron, he has many different names. One of the names is the lesser Yahweh. Yahweh is the name for God. So he's ancient. His energy is ancient, been here since the planet pretty much has existed, from the first spark of existence. He helps with so many different things. Just trying to think of a couple off the top of my head. He's known, for example, for helping with the raising of children, and whether you want to call them the indigos, the diamonds, the crystal children, they've got many different names. But every generation that's coming in, which have got different qualities to them, and they can be challenging sometimes to parent, particularly in a world that is changing so much also. So you can turn to Metatron for guidance with raising children, issues to do with children or families, issues to do with finding your path and your calling. A lot of the people, because I've been training people for a number of years with regards to understanding the Metatron energy and how it can work with them in their life. And what it tends to do once you become aligned with it is Metatron will bring change effectively into your life. And sometimes that can be difficult change, but it is change that your soul has actually requested and asked for. So sometimes you can get a bit of a bad rap, which is sort of like, hold on, you know, I'm sort of now working with Metatron and this has fallen apart, or now, you know, this job no longer works in the way that it used to, or I've got issues that are coming up with my relationship. But really what's happening is he's just bringing to the fore that which maybe we've buried our head in the sand about, because we all do that from time to time and haven't wanted to look at. So it's a master healer. The healing power comes via sacred geometric codes, color, numbers as well. The whole numerology is very much linked into the energy of Metatron. He's just the most awesome guide, really, that I would say, along with Jesus, who's my other main guide, has just been with me pretty much my whole life. And yeah, that thing about an encyclopedia of all that we have been, all that we are, and all that we ever will be, if he's trying to help you access that. So I very much believe that an energy such as Metatron certainly doesn't want to be prayed to. None of the archangels want to be prayed to or worshipped in that way. What they're trying to do, especially Metatron, is give you a bridge back to yourself, so that you can access better your own higher self, your own intuition, your own abilities. And with the energy of Archangel Sandalphon, who is usually with Metatron, they sort of work in tandem a lot of the time. Sandalphon will then help you to ground in the ideas and the inspiration that Metatron is prompting and nudging within you. So I'm sure there's a lot that I've left out, but off the top of my head, those are just a few of the things that are coming up. I mean, I think probably particularly Anne knows that I've created a self-mastery oracle deck, and I did one for Metatron and one for the Christ consciousness. And the Metatron one, I'm just going to actually shuffle and pull a card out, if that's okay, because within it there's 55 cards, and all of them effectively are a quality that Metatron can help you with, or something that he stands for. And I'm realizing that I haven't even shuffled the deck, but the one that is on the bottom of the deck is this one. And he's sort of like, Amanda, why are you not talking about this? Because it's such a relevant energy for Metatron, which is the energy of shadow and light and dark. So within our world, helping us to understand the darkness and why it's there, understanding duality better, but also understanding the shadow energy that we have within ourselves, that again we often don't want to face or look at, because we just want to present the shiny, the shiny bright side of ourself that is going to be acceptable, not necessarily the parts of ourself that we hide away, whether through shame, embarrassment, or just unhealed wounding. I'm just going to split the deck and see one more that comes up. We've got an energy of love. I will say something about love, because I describe the Metatron energy as being tough love. It's like a tough love. So it's going to try to stretch you to places within yourself that you can do it. You can do it. You can do it, even though you think you can't. And I've noticed myself that often I will be resisting, it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to go and heal that. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to do what you're maybe asking of me. But when I really sink into what is being asked of me, I absolutely, with 100% conviction, know that it is for my highest good. So he's trying to help us to get to the highest timeline individually, but also collectively. But certainly with regards to the world, I can't show it because it's actually over there on that wall. But for many years, I had a painting behind me of Metatron. Looks a bit like that one. But in this one, he's holding the sun in his hands. But in the other one over there, he's actually holding the world in a Merkaba. And so he's very much like a guardian of this planet as well. That's one of the things that he's tasked with. So no small amount of responsibility really on his shoulders. But I will also say, final thing before I throw it back to you both. Also, I love his humor because I've got quite a good sense of humor, and it's not just me. A lot of people that work with Metatron start to understand that actually there is humor, because I think it's a human construct that ascended masters or archangels are humorless. And I don't believe that is the case. Most of the ascended masters that I've worked with have shown me, if not human qualities, certainly something that I could resonate with as a human. But of course, with Metatron and Sandalphon, they have actually had incarnations as a human being. Enoch was Metatron and Elijah was Sandalphon. So there is a greater degree of understanding of what it is to be human, very much like the energies also of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, for example. Yeah.
So one of the things you touched on when you said, when I was aware that Metatron was one of my guides, at what age did you realize, one, that you could channel and that you had these incredible guides to work with? And how did that come about? Or was it something that was just always intrinsically a part of who you were?
I think I've always intrinsically been linked into my spiritual self. And that, in a nutshell, is just because I grew up in a fairly religious home. Quite traditional in terms of Christianity, but we tried lots of different variations of Christianity, let's put it that way, from, I don't know, oh gosh, it's gone out of my mind. What do they call it? The very free churches, evangelical churches, that's what I'm stretching for. Evangelical churches to more straight-laced churches with, the incense and hymns. So I've always had a degree of spirituality in my life. With angels, I don't know, I think in the 1980s in particular, those of us that are old enough to remember those days in the 80s, there was a big influx of information about angels, particularly probably brought in by the likes of Doreen Virtue, Diana Cooper. And I really resonated with that. And I can't really explain to you why. It was just like a light had gone off, and I just knew that that was my thing, that angels and me somehow went together. And I just really resonated with the whole angelic vibration and energy. And of course, angels are in Christianity anyway, but this was in a new way, a different way, because what was being taught in the 1980s was that you could have a direct connection with them. And, to this day, of course, many teachers, including myself, will talk about looking for angel signs, whether it is with regards to seeing feathers or shapes in the sky, in clouds, or songs, or, however they want to get your attention. So I think the 1980s in particular, even though I was a teenager at the time and into all of my pop music and everything, I also started to get more of an interest in angels per se. And then with regard to Metatron, what I teach is what happened to me, which is that one day you just get the knock. You get the knock and something happens which prompts you to investigate further via essentially him knocking at your door. Now, not necessarily literally, of course, but something just prompts you to open a book, see a video, listen to a podcast, whatever it is, and you'll hear the name and something just, again, a light goes on. And for me, it came in via colour therapy, because I'm a colour therapist as well. And even though I've got my own range of colour therapy sprays now, and I teach colour therapy, I was taught it originally via the colour mirrors system. And at the time, they only had, I think, one archangel in their whole range of bottles, colour bottles, and that was Metatron. And it was literally from that I just developed this real interest. And then I started to hear him say to me, I want you to create your own range. And I ran away from that request for a couple of years, fearing that I couldn't do it. But I think I was watching some of your other shows, and I can't remember the name of the man that you had on, but he was an astrologer. And he was talking about how he came to astrology. And I was just trying to think about, well, how did I come to colour? How did I come to Metatron? How did I come to angels? And looking back, I think it's a very Saturnian path that I've been on. I've got Saturn on my midheaven, and it is that energy of just never give up and just keep going. So all it takes is, for me, is just to have an interest in something. And then obviously with the combined power of Metatron's energy behind it, which was, he was wanting me to work with him and help get the energy out into the world, not just me, but lots of people who are called to work with him. I think it was just, I had this path where I just didn't give up. And over the last 20 years in particular, there's so many incidences where, I would turn up. I remember once, years ago, there was a beautiful fairy shop in the town where I live. It's no longer there. And every Friday I would take my coloured bottles. In fact, they weren't my colour bottles. They were the colour mirror ones. It was before I made my own, but I'd take all the bottles in to do readings. Nobody came and ever wanted a reading. I did holistic shows. Nobody ever wanted to buy what I was selling, but I just had this Saturn energy, which was just like, I bloody well am going to make this work, because I know that it will eventually if I just keep going with it. And, then I did readings, then I got into healings, ran workshops, and it just started to then flow a bit better. But I'm putting my hands up to say it wasn't particularly easy in the early days. And I think that's can be sometimes quite a metatronic energy as well, because it's a bit like the diamond. What he's trying to do is he's trying to create the diamond light within ourselves. And we know that diamonds are created under pressure. They're created under abrasive conditions. It doesn't necessarily land in your lap and it's like, oh, all of a sudden I've got a business and I'm working with color or angels. It is a case of just carrying on and with conviction. I suppose really looking back at it, I just had a very strong belief and knowingness that this is what I was meant to be doing. And I trusted the energy that I was working with, which did feel very different from the Jesus energy, and it still does. But I suppose as I'm sitting here and I can feel his energy around me, what he's saying, of course, is it's the remembrance of other lifetimes where I've also worked with this energy. And that's true of many people that are called to work with the Metatron energy. It's a remembrance more than anything else.
Could I ask a question
Yeah.
about the sprays? Because I've got a couple of them here. And I should tell people that I am taking your first level course right now.
Yeah, you are, yes.
And it's closed, but you will be offering it again, right?
September, yes.
Yeah. But and so I just have this one, which is the flame spray. One of
that was the
Metatron.
first one. That was the first one that was ever made. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. So this is the first spray that you made, and was it
2012.
I was going to say 12, which is such an interesting
Yeah.
time for you to jump into that. But I just wondered if you could tell people a little bit about how they work. And it's beautiful. I'll spray it right now. Who knows what will happen?
Yeah, you have a spray.
But, I mean, it's just so nice. It's really infused with the smell, but has just a wonderful feeling as well. I love
There's
them.
a lot of different components really, because they are aura sprays, and of course we all have got our aura, and most of the time we walk around and we don't even consider it. Sometimes we might, if we are very sensitive to energy, we might have an idea or an inkling that our aura has gone quite flat or is quite close to our body, and that can happen when we're stressed, we're unwell, we're shocked maybe by something that's happened to ourselves or something even that's happened in the news. Your aura can contract. But Metatron is about expansion. It's about, stepping into your light and stepping into your power. And your aura, of course, is just as much a part of yourself as the hair on your head or the bones in your body. So aura sprays are a great way to remember this is actually part of me. And rather than keeping it very small and, being able to expand it for many different reasons, whether it's to do with Merkaba work, whether it's to do with healing, because, of course, a lot of disease enters the body last. It comes into the physical body last. It starts actually out here in the aura. So you can do a lot of healing actually in the auric space. Many people also are walking around maybe sometimes with tears in their aura or literally great big gaping holes in their aura, which can come in via drugs, alcohol, other things as well. And I'm not being a party pooper, because I like my glass of wine like the best person, but it's just getting everything in balance, So yeah, they're aura sprays, and the idea behind them essentially was color. They had to have color, and actually it's glass. So we get the glass sprayed, and I've got all sorts of different colors. You can see some of them behind me, but orange was the first one. And again, this was a bit of a funny story, really. This is all about trust, because I was in a workshop. This was probably about 2011, before I'd made any of them. And you sit in meditation, and Metatron was brought in. I wasn't running the workshop, somebody else was. And, you go around in the circle, and it's like, what did you get? What did you get? What did you get? And everyone was coming out with these really profound things that had happened. And they got to me, and all I had heard was, the future's bright, the future's orange. Now, I don't know whether this is the same in America, but at that time in the UK, it was an advertising slogan for Orange, telecommunications, if they still even exist, telephone company. The future's bright, the future's orange. And I felt really stupid saying it, because I thought, why are you remembering that? And then I realized what he was actually saying, which was that this was the start of it all. There were many other signs that I got as well. But orange is just one of those colors. Again, when Metatron tends to come around you, often people will say, oh my God, or some of the people on the course, I'm sure they won't mind me saying it, but one lady was saying before she'd started the course, before she even knew the course was happening, she started to buy, I think, a bright pair of orange shoes or something, or an orange handbag. It's quite an unusual color to really buy clothing in. She's like, oh, that's why I've suddenly been attracted to it. But yes, it's got color energy. They've got essential oils in them. Sacred geometry is how they're activated. And they've also got a crystal essence in them, which we make on a sort of full moon, new moon, some sort of portal date. And yeah, in a nutshell, that's what they are. But equally, they are created to embody the energy of the particular archangel or ascended master that they that they have, because it's very much linked into the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto, who I was blessed to meet and interview about a year before he died. And if people know Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, there was a book called Messages from Water. What he showed is that what you put onto water, the water becomes. So if you say, you know, if you put love onto water, it embodies the energy of that. And the crystals that are created when they're frozen are beautiful, in the same way that if you put onto this hate, hatred, division, you'll get crystals that are deformed. And you know, it's interesting, actually. There's a couple of local brands to me. I think they sell sauces or something to put on your burgers. And it's called, I don't know I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's something like Devil's Brew, for example, something like that. And every time I see it, I think, oh my God, people don't realize that actually the energy of that is in that bottle of sauce. So it's just one of my little things, really, that I look for what things are called, because it's the same with ourself. What we call ourself every day is what we become. So if you talk about yourself being a failure or not being able to do something, hey presto, the cells in your body respond to that. The waters in your body respond to that, because you're 70% water. So yeah, the sprays really are just an aid to help remind you of the power of a particular angel or ascended master, and also to get a hit of the color. So orange, I mean, do you like the color orange before I tell you what it is about, separate to Metatron? Because sometimes people don't like particular colors, and that reveals something also. Do both of you like orange?
It's not my favorite. With that being said, though, I have 2 dresses that are orange that I enjoy wearing. So
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's got to be the right shade.
Yeah. It brings its own energy, that's for sure.
It does.
I've always thought of it as connected to sacral energy, right? Yes,
sacral. So it's a great shock absorber. It helps to absorb shock and trauma. But to me, well, not just to me, it's such a vibrant, alive color, a friendly color, an exuberant color. I think it brings out a little bit of the extrovert in us all, even those of us that are more introverted. And it's fun, it's sociable. So, as opposed to another color which will give you something else or help heal something else. So, but that was the first one anyway. The future's bright. What was it? The future's bright, the future's orange. And I think to this day, because I don't make these sprays anymore, I used to make them upstairs in my bedroom, but it got too big. So I've got a team led by Tracy now in the southwest of England. But it's still the same combination of oils that Metatron gave me all those years ago that he wanted to put in his spray. And the flame has got clove in it in particular. And clove is quite good for warding off negativity and protection as well. Yeah.
Do archangels in general speak in colors, would you say, or is that a particularly Metatronian language? I'm noticing in the chat that the Green Knight, Aaron, who's chosen a color as his name, and we know him. Hello,
yes.
Ronnie. He says forest green and cobalt blue are my colors. And I think we all sort of resonate with particular colors.
We do. Yes. And I mean, traditionally, and I still believe that a lot, the archangels do belong to a particular color ray. So, for example, green would be Archangel Raphael. Interesting, I'm wearing green today, but it's just because it's a new top and I thought it was quite pretty. Although actually, I always look at the colors people are wearing because it does actually say something about yourself. So green is also to do with growth, it's to do with change, it's to do with harmony, it's healing. But yeah, green would be Raphael, blue would be Archangel Michael, yellow would be Jophiel, pink would be
Purple.
Shamuel. You know, they've all got a color ray. With Metatron, he's really the whole rainbow. So even though there are predominant colors that often will stand out and it will be like, that is a sign that he's sort of around, definitely. He also, it's the whole rainbow ray. So, and what he's always taught me is to not be too linear in our thinking, and he's making me laugh now, too human in our thinking, because as human beings, we want to box things in. So even though I have just said Archangel Michael is on the blue ray, because he is, Michael, if he wants to, can leap across and be on the red ray. Of course he can, you know, because they all work with each other, actually. I think it just helps us to connect to them better if we can maybe just associate one particular color. But I think it's really important to remember that in nature, colors all work together. You know, the rainbow is made up of the whole rainbow. So we're just separating them really for our human mind to be able to understand a little bit better, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think it's also important to remember the intermingling of colors. And that's also true with regards to the chakras as well. So even though Metatron works with via me anyway, I mean, other people might work with him differently, but via me and the way that I teach and I train and how I've been taught by him, he talks about 12 chakras within the body. And of course, there are many more than that, but there are particularly 12 that we focus on. And yeah, I've given a color to each one, which is what he's told me to do. But he's very clear that over time, the goal is that all the chakras will become rainbows. But it's just, we're not quite there yet. So if on a particular day you feel as though you need, I don't know, blue maybe within the heart, because blue is a color that brings peace and calmness, don't think that you can't do that just because blue is the color for the throat chakra. In the same way that if you feel as though you need pink going into the throat chakra because it's going to soften something or just bring in a loving vibration because maybe you feel as though you're not heard or you're finding it hard to speak up and you're just needing an influx of the pink ray, which is love, that's okay as well. So the Metatron energy is very much almost like giving you a great big box of tools, and one of those tools might be color, and then shaking it all up and saying, go and play with it, go and experiment, go and see what happens under his guise, under his watchful eye. Because I'm always very clear, especially with my work online, that Metatron is the gatekeeper. So, you know, if I'm working with other energies or I'm channeling other people, Metatron is that gatekeeper that helps keep it safe. And also so that I know that actually I am working with the energy I think I am. I think it's very important that you have a guide who is a gatekeeper energy. And that's definitely one of his roles as well. As would be Jesus also. But Metatron with my work, for whatever reason, seems to have... he's making me laugh. It just feels, it's a bit like he's talking about the technological age, and it sounds so sacrilegious to say what I'm about to say, but I have to say it, which is almost like he's a bit more technologically savvy than maybe Jesus is. It's just so, because you know the energy of Jesus is just this beautiful, humble, humble, loving heart, isn't it? And of course, is online as well. But I do think there's something about Metatron being involved with technology and helping us with that. And one area I haven't really looked at very much yet with him, but I really want to, is AI and where,
Mhm.
you know, how does all that merge? That's probably going to be some future work, 'cause I'm sure he's got something to say on all that.
Can I ask another question, Natalie? I'm sorry.
of
I just have to ask this because you were talking about these colors and how Metatron is really the rainbow, and we should be working towards, I suppose, integrating all of the colors. But what I find so fascinating is how attached we are to using colors for teams. And it's always, for example, red versus blue or orange. When you're saying orange, to me, I think, having known many football fans, the Volunteers, Tennessee Volunteers are orange, or the Gators have orange, right?
Yes.
So we tend to think of the colors with these different groups. And one of the things I loved so much about your recent videos over the last few years was this approach that you took to talking about the violet pill, right? Where people are focused on the red pill, the blue pill, but you're bringing together the violet pill. And I'm wondering if that is a message that we need to hear in particular at this time, but is that something that humanity always has done? What is it about us taking sides and representing it with colors?
Well, the color thing is interesting also because the red and blue division that you have in the USA at the moment, and red is red and blue is blue. Interestingly enough, if you come across to the UK, we have the colors the other way round. So what is red would be blue and what is blue would be red. And I always found that quite amusing, really. But you asked the question, something along the lines of why now? I think we're ready to start to have the conversation. I think why people, let's take it away just from politics, of course, because politics is such a triggering subject, because division can be in pretty much anything on the earth, can't it? Just politics is one manifestation of it. But I think people go into groups, put it that way, or allegiances, whether it's sports, politics, or anything else, because underlying it all, there's an energy of safety, that I'm safe if I'm in a group. I'm safe if I'm with my tribe. I'm safe if I'm with like-minded people. I'm not safe if I'm going to be with this lot over here who think completely different from me or embody something differently. And of course, part of that can also be religion, belief systems too. But we are in an unsafe world. So I think what's happening is people are becoming more and more entrenched in their camps, which is what we're seeing across the world. But I'm always given the analogy by Metatron of the rubber band. You know, the rubber band can only be pulled so taut until it ultimately snaps. We haven't quite got there yet, but we'll get to a point where we are so entrenched and so separated and so divided, and we've so forgotten that this person over here is actually my brother. There's going to be something that brings us back together. And, you know, I don't like to be a prophet of doom or anything like that, because I'm very much a glass half full type of person. But I think the energy with Mother Earth right now in particular, I've said this a lot on my videos, I feel that she's going to be she is one of our greatest teachers, but I feel as though she's going to have a role to play going forward in bringing us to our senses, is what I'm hearing actually. And back to each other. But I also think I don't know about the astrology because I'm not an astrologer, but it'd be interesting to know what the astrology of the times is with regard to the path to unity. Of course, the age of Aquarius, which is upon us, invites the energy of unity to come closer. But I think we're very entrenched in the fact that it has to happen this year, or it has to happen in this decade, or it has to happen in my lifetime. Whereas actually, we're all only here for such a short period of time when you consider actually the whole history of the world. And you look back over all of the different civilizations that we've had and all the different ages that you and I might have been on this planet. And we've been playing this game of separation and duality so well for so many years and so many lifetimes that it's almost like entrenched in our DNA that this is what it is to be human. We have to take a side. It's very primal. And what I'm hearing as I'm sitting here talking to you is Metatron is saying this is where the light codes come in, you know, via the upgrades, via the downloads that we receive, whether it be through a portal date, an eclipse, a moon date, or a celebration of something such as Easter, or, you know, take it into any of the belief systems around the world. It's whatever you place focus on. And you know, where two or more are gathered in my name, if you put focus onto anything and ask for something good to come in, it can come in. And I feel as though these light codes are going to be changing us at a deep cellular level. And in the spiritual community, we hear that conversation a lot. And people talk about it in terms of becoming more crystalline and more able to touch and walk into the fifth dimensional consciousness and beyond. But fifth dimensional consciousness and beyond, where that goes, where that pathway goes, is out of division and separation and duality and ultimately into unity. But we're not there yet. We're a long way from being there yet. But some of us are planting the seeds and trying to embody it, and probably getting a lot of flack thrown at us because people get really, really triggered when you won't be in one camp. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have an allegiance, you can't have a preference, but I talk about the violet pill energy, the unity energy, being about, you can have a position, you're a human being. I have a position on things. I have a very strong position on a lot of things, but it's about trying to not close our mind to what we don't know yet and what other people might have to say that we might not be in agreement with. But what Metatron and the angels are asking us to do is to sit with them and try to learn something from them. That's my dog agreeing, because animals are probably ahead of us with this game. But yeah, it triggers people enormously. I notice on my channel, I mean, I do political readings, and I've always been taught by spirit to try to look to the highest light in every single human. And if I can't do that, I don't tend to read on them, to be perfectly honest. But I've said nice things about both sides of the political divide over the years, and I will continue to do so. And people really don't like that, because it's like, but I thought you were here. I thought you were with us. And it's like, no, I'm with myself. I've got my own, this is about sovereignty. Sovereignty is about being able to make up our own mind, but hopefully being able to sit with people that we disagree with. And it is not easy. And no one is saying it is easy. And I don't find it easy either, but at least we've got our eyes fixed on a horizon that we're trying to get to. At least we're trying, because a lot of people at the moment aren't even trying to do that. It's very John Lennon as well. I always bring John Lennon in at this point, because I did a beautiful channeling with John quite a few years ago. I know I've said this on other videos recently, but it's just such a strong piece of imagery. John inviting us to sit in, is it Central Park in New York? I think it is. And sit in a unity circle, and you go to sit beside the person you want to. And it's like, no, you can't sit beside her. You can't sit beside him. Go and sit over there with that person that you really don't get on with. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. No, that's the point of a unity circle. And the talking stick as well, bringing that in and trying to, truly hear what other people are saying. Because we don't do that enough, I don't think. It's, yeah.
I have so many questions. I want to go off in 30 different directions. So I think what I'm going to do is there's probably going to be a couple of questions within this one.
Yes.
So watching some of your recent videos, you talked specifically about the volcanic energy that you see coming up, and talking about Gaia shaking things up to sort of bring us to a realization.
Yeah.
My personal belief is, 2020 started a big awakening for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have gotten to this place, at least not this quickly. I feel like when the world shifted, a certain group of people started questioning things, looking at things, seeing the divides that were being created.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions, but then I want to add to it before you sort of run with it, is, do you think that even though we're not at that point where we're living in this 5D world, but that the wake up is happening at a faster rate? And also you talk about the division that we're living within, and you're absolutely correct in your description of it. But if we go back, say, even to the 70s and 80s, people could sit at a dinner table, and I know it was always said, you don't discuss politics, you don't discuss religion, you don't discuss any of these things, but people would. These things would inevitably be brought up. The conversations at times would get heated, but people weren't throwing their friends away if they disagreed with them. They would have this rowdy dinner party, and then they would go their own separate ways. And sometimes they might say, listen, let's not talk about this because we don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like we've devolved into this space that we're in now, where there's a division. And through 2020, for me, looking at it, it was the mask thing. There was a visual division. It wasn't necessarily about color, but there were these cues that we could see that showed people which side of the aisle you were on. And then that allowed people to attack from either direction. And I wonder if and I'm curious as to what you get, whether we had to devolve to get to a point of actually being able to have a mass awakening and ascension at the same time, or is this just an ugly part of our evolution?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think you're spot on. I think, unfortunately, human nature is such that we don't like to change unless we're forced to. And we can see that in our own individual lives. And I'll put my hand up to that as well. Collectively, we certainly don't want to change unless we are forced to. So things are brought in to create the greatest division, the greatest pain, maybe, the greatest trauma, the greatest separation. And it's like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to deal with that? As you were asking me the question, Natalie, the one thing that I've written down here is, I think, the role of the media. I mean, I know we know this, but that's what's coming to me. It's the role of the media, and also social media, because, of course, in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have social media. And I don't know. I mean, I was younger and I wasn't really taking notice of what the newspapers were saying. Maybe they were just as bad as they are now. But certainly with regards to my own country, for example, you know, I do always scan the news most days because I like to know what's going on. And I try to look at a number of different sources from different countries to get an idea. But to me, it is just so obvious, the bias that is there. And by that, I'm just saying you can read a paper that is right wing, and then you read a paper that is left wing. And it's like, hold on, you're actually talking about the same thing, but you're saying completely different things. It's like, where is the truth? And I think the more that we evolve spiritually, we are searching for the truth. We're searching for the truth within ourselves, but we're also searching for the truth just generally out there in life. So I think in many ways, what I believe is, I mean, I think there are good people within the media. So I don't want to make a blanket statement that all of the media is bad, because I don't believe that is true. And actually, you know, a good journalist is worth gold, I think, in this day and age. And there are some great journalists out there. But I've totally lost my train of thought, what I was about to say. Sorry, this is age creeping in. Where was I going with that? I'll come back to it in a moment. I was talking about social media and newspapers. Oh yes, people just people needing to grow. Yeah, that's right. People searching for truth. It's almost as though, taking the media as an example, it seems to have become so, it's like a soap opera. I'm sorry, but to me, it just feels like a soap opera. I can't really even take it seriously. That doesn't mean I don't care with regards to the big stories of the day and war and everything else that's going on. But the way it's reported, I think the more that you evolve, you just start to see it. I mean, Shakespeare said it, didn't he? All the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. And I think you just start to see it like that. And ultimately, we just have to try to find what is our truth. And going back to what you were saying with regards to the pandemic energies and the division that that brought, I think I'm trying to be tactful. I think it was one of those times in the world which was in some ways it was a bit of a test in terms of however you decided and whatever you decided to do and however you decided to play it, let's put it that way. Ideally, you should have been going with your truth, not being told what to do based on getting a free beef burger or something, you know?
Do you think that sparked the awakening picking up speed?
Yes, and I think it's accelerating even more so now. I certainly see it in the UK. I'm sure it's the same in the US as well. But it's as though pretty much everything that the government might try to do or get away with, people pick up on it really quickly. And that can be a benefit of social media. There's more scrutiny, there's more discernment, but I still think even with that, you've still got to think for yourself, because otherwise you can just get swept away on a bandwagon, can't you, in terms of what you think you should be feeling because or feeling about something because this group over here says it. So I don't know, it's that Rumi quote about I'll meet you in, I can't remember the actual passage, it's a beautiful poem by Rumi, which is about I'll meet you, maybe somebody could put it in the comments if they know it, about meeting you in the field.
There's a field.
Yeah, I'll meet you in the field beyond difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we need to be reminding ourselves that we need to be getting to.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last couple of weeks in particular, with regards to just what's happening in the world on a daily basis, it's very hard to keep up with it all. But the one thing I know is absolutely crucial is that we don't get into the drama of it. It's as though I feel we're being played a lot of the time. And that doesn't mean that you know, things might happen that you disagree with, but it's like, is it helping my growth to get myself into an absolute tiz about whatever? Is it actually helping me day to day to run my home, to parent my children, to try to be the best that I can be today, to stay heart-centered? Or am I just getting played by the media who are whipping up this division, and some are still falling for it, and let them, basically let them, that's their path. But just stay true to you, just stay true to you and what you believe, and also knowing that none of us know it all. We should all try to wake up tomorrow thinking, what am I going to learn today that I don't know? What's going to surprise me today about somebody that maybe I had a closed mind about?
And in the chat, we have the quote,
yes.
Out beyond the idea of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
And, you know, I had a thought about that also. I think we can absolutely feel passionately that there is something in the world that we'd like to change. And I think that one of the wonderful things that you've provided people with are tools for people to feel as if they can do something, that there are tools to help empower you to go and live out your truth and to seek to make a difference. And I think one of the things that came out in your most recent video is this whole thing that we've been wrapped up in. The more we get caught up in whatever is the media frenzy of the day, the less we are empowered ourselves. And people continue to seek the Messiah. in whatever way it is, right? That it's,
Mm.
and I feel like this is wonderfully captured in your Christ consciousness deck.
Mm.
I feel like I'm your advertiser here, but I love this
very much.
deck, and I do want to ask you more about that. But
Mm.
I feel Christ energy was about turning away from the larger structure that was telling you,
Yeah.
we're here to be your savior.
Yeah.
But instead, this Christ energy came to tell us, no, actually, it's within you. You have
Yes.
the power, and we continue to look outside of ourselves. You talked in your last video about the Lord of the Rings and that whole message from Gandalf, who I
Yes.
almost just called Dumbledore, but it's sort of a similar message in Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much in the Lord of the Rings. I've actually finished the films now. We've watched all of them now, back to back. The Hobbit, back to back. Lord of the Rings, back to back. There's so much in that. And the thing that I wasn't fully appreciating, even though it's in the title, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I need to now read the books as well, but from the films, I suddenly thought, the fellowship. Nobody can do it alone. That to get past the finish line, whatever that means, we have to be, there has to be fellowship. There has to be people helping each other. And, you know, in the Lord of the Rings, the people that are in that fellowship are a strange bunch that have been brought together, you know, kings and elves and hobbits and wizards, and then there's without spoiling it for people that don't know the film, there's something towards the end where all of the different realms and types of people, they just bow down really to these little hobbits who are the ones who are just representing really very ordinary qualities, but that's where the magic is. I got so much from that series of books, but yeah, I think, Anne, what you're really talking about is going back to the Christ consciousness energy and Jesus. I mean, Jesus was a revolutionary. He lived in extraordinary times, like we're living in extraordinary times. He was about dismantling the structures of the day, but not via bricks and violence, via the heart and via each person remembering that, as well as the fellowship of, for example, the disciples. So I think sometimes people dismiss this thing about staying in the heart is the way to go. That's your anchor, because I don't know, maybe it's the way it's been presented over the years. It feels like, oh, it can't be that simple. It can't be, what's that got? How's that going to help? You know, because I think it's as I'm sitting here, I'm feeling it's tied into this patriarchal energy, which we've had on the planet for so long, which is that I have to do something. I have to, unfortunately, the history of our planet is I have to pick up a spear, you know, or pick up an arrow or worse. And the new age, the new golden age, it can't be built on that old energy. It has to be built more via the energy of the divine feminine also, but it's through the heart that it's going to be built. So we have to put our sticks down, basically. And yeah, I think the Christ energy is so needed for these times. And probably if you've watched my videos, you'll know I talk a lot about the fact that I have no problem if anybody wants to go to church, and if that is a comfort to you, a support to you, it's a lifeline to you, brilliant. But for me, I always say I left the church, but I never left Jesus, because I've done the church for decades when I was a younger woman, and I personally found it too constrictive. So I've sort of, like many people, just experiencing via the Christ consciousness energy, this direct relationship really with Jesus, who just always reminds us of what it is to be human, how hard it is to be human. Because it was hard for him. Let's face it, it was hard for him. It wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Isn't it? Oh, go ahead now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to touch on one thing, because you talked about the patriarchal world that we live in, and I think everybody would agree that that's a fair statement. And then moving into the divine feminine, but as the world seems to be trying to do that. And numerologically, the fact that we're in the 2020s speaks to moving into the divine feminine as well, or into that energy. But there, at the same time, has been what feels like, or at least for a lot of people, a very targeted attack on masculinity. And energetically, or I don't know if Metatron or Jesus has anything to say about this, but will we find that balance where we don't need to destroy the masculine to move into the feminine?
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you were saying, there's been an attack on the you said an attack on the masculine. I thought you were actually going to say, Natalie, that there's been an attack on the feminine. So it's interesting, isn't it? 'Cause I think there's been an attack on both.
Oh, really?
I thought that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was
both.
thinking, where are our women today? Where are the big? Princess Diana is someone I think of as that heart-centered feminine presence that was in the world.
You nearly said president there, didn't you?
I wish she were the president. I would have voted for her.
Can I just say one thing? Because I also,
I'm looking for a card. Yeah, yes.
I also think with the feminine that's coming in, we have a lot of these women that come into very high levels of power that embody a very masculine energy, but at the same time, men, and we're not talking about necessarily leaders, but men that are very masculine in how they present to the world at the moment. For this is a perspective of at least a portion of the population feel like they're being attacked. And there are certainly mothers of boys in chats and comments on social media talking about, I'm raising my son to be a man, and I don't want him to be told that he can't be masculine. Like, that's literally in his DNA. I'm not saying either side is right, but it feels like there is this attack. And when these women get into power and they feel that they have to embody the masculine energy, and we're made up of both energies, all of us, and we embody those. At times, I know I have a very masculine energy, despite the fact that I'm very, very feminine presenting and in life. But will we find that balance where we're able to settle into the divine feminine energy without either side feeling like they are under attack or that they have to alter who they are?
I believe we will, but I think we've got ourselves into a terrible mess, basically, with it all. And I think what it is for men to embody the divine feminine energy is at times misunderstood, very, very misunderstood, that somehow to be embodying divine feminine energy within a masculine body either means you've got to become one, or you've got to emulate one, or you've got to become I don't know, a bit of a sissy, and then I'm not a real man, that type of energy. And the same thing actually applies to women that step into a masculine world. I mean, I'm like you, Natalie. I've always identified of having quite a strong masculine energy. And I've got another woman here. I mean, not physically here, although I have channeled her in the past, Margaret Thatcher, who was a woman in a man's world, the first female prime minister we had here. And without getting into her politics, I think one of the reasons she was hated, as I say, let's set her politics aside for one moment, was there was definitely a backlash, I feel, about her just being a woman in a man's world. So I think it's very misunderstood. And then also, if one of the masculine qualities is achieving, being motivated, doing. But then if you do that and you achieve that and you're successful in that, well, hold on a minute, you're not a good mum. You can't be a good wife. You can't be a good sister. You can't be a good friend. Whereas if you had a man that was a high achieving male, nobody would be questioning other areas of their life that must be going off the rails because you're not, so it goes both ways, doesn't it? To answer your question, I think we've got ourselves into a right mess because we don't understand what it is to embody both masculine and feminine energy. Back to Archangel Metatron, one of the things he is really, really good at doing and known for doing is helping to balance out the masculine and the feminine side within the body. And there's many ways that you can do that. But for example, working with Metatron's cube and envisaging it spiraling down through you and asking it to balance both your masculine and feminine can help. But it's all very well visualizing or doing a meditation. You've then got to put it into practice. So if, like me, Natalie, you've got a more pronounced masculine side, even though, yeah, you're very feminine, hopefully I am as well. But I know that my feminine side is actually weaker. I need to make a conscious effort to do something about that, you know? And what does that mean? I mean, hopefully my feminine aspects of being a giver, which I am, are already quite, you know, heightened. But there are other aspects, maybe less so. So I need to be, I was about to say doing. Doing's a masculine word, isn't it? It's not really the right word to use for it, but just balancing it out. I wanted to show this card actually, which is from the Christ Consciousness deck. And this is the card of sacred union between the masculine and the feminine. So yeah, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, but we've got here the Vesica Pisces symbol. And of course, the Vesica Pisces is the two circles overlapping to create the third energy in the middle. And it's that third energy, which is what we are needing to create in our world. But to see it created in our world, we've got to create it in ourselves, haven't we? So I think as difficult and as challenging as it is to look out onto the world and see the absolute mess we've got ourselves into with regards to the male-female dynamic and how that might be expressed or understood or judged, we have to be the change. And I know people hate when we say that, because, oh no, we want the magic bullet that's going to come in and just sort it all out for us, but it's not going to. It will help get to this the more that we can note the masculine and the feminine. So for myself, an example to bring it home to people would be, you know, I mentioned earlier on in this broadcast that I've got a very Saturnian energy, you know, Saturn on the midheaven. I work hard. I always have worked hard. When I was my dad used to tell me to put the books away at 10 o'clock at night as a teenager. You know, when other teenagers were out doing God knows what, I was sat with my school books, you know, stop it, go to bed, Amanda, put your work away. So that is a very masculine energy. And so what I try to do now is I'm learning how to balance it, you know, and slow down a bit and say no to things and not do as much, which is so alien, because it's like, well, hold on, I've got an afternoon. What can I do? Maybe you don't have to do anything. Maybe just, I don't know, go and smell the roses. So, but I think that's how we make the change. But working with the Vesica Pisces symbol as well, I think in meditation would be very helpful to just think about what are my masculine qualities? What are my feminine qualities? And how can am I fully integrated? And a great way sometimes of also seeing whether you're integrated is, what's your body doing? You know, which side of your body is out of balance? Which side of your body has got more of the aches and pains? I have to confess, it's usually my left side of my body, which is like, oh, a bit of a twinge there, you know, a bit of an ache there. Yeah, because that's where the attention needs to be. So
I want to make one final statement. This isn't even a question, but maybe you'll relate. I always find that moving through life to get things done, and because I tend to make really big moves, that's why people see me as a very masculine energy. And I always say I've got to take care of things, because if I don't do it, I don't have somebody else to do it for me. Yeah. Yet whenever I'm in a relationship, I do pick very masculine men, because you need to be really strong to deal with me, because I don't want to be running all over somebody who is weaker than I am. But the moment I'm in the presence of the divine masculine, I step back and I step into the divine feminine for myself, and I'm able to be in that role because I'm able to trust the individual that I'm with.
It's really interesting, because number one, I think we don't see enough of the divine masculine in our world, maybe because there are, what is that? Men don't know what their role is anymore. They don't know what they're necessarily evolving into. But I'll tell you something. I think last year, I can't remember what had happened in the world, because I do tend to comment on things that go on in the world. And maybe it was some of the awful things that were happening to women around the world, or maybe it was something that somebody had said to me. I really can't remember what it was, but I put it was like a clarion call out on my social media pages, because I do have men that follow me, and I'm very grateful for the men that do follow me, and they're absolutely the divine masculine. But it was also this thing in terms of like, where are the men standing up for women? Where are the men that are standing up for women? If you look at the stuff that's going on in our world, I'm particularly talking about things such as Afghanistan, which it's just so horrendous. I can't even go there in terms of what's being done to women over there at the moment. But it's like, so I suppose what I'm really trying to say, Natalie, is that for the divine feminine it's almost like she doesn't necessarily know what the divine masculine looks like a lot of the time. You know, it's like, where are you? And how can I start to respond to you as a divine feminine if you haven't shown up in your full power? Now, I believe they will, and I believe they are, but I'm hearing it's a slow trickle. Excuse the pun. It's a slow trickle. It's like, come on, you know? As I say, I'm an optimist. I believe that there's a lot of younger generations coming in who are more balanced, actually. If you look at a lot of the kids these days, they are more balanced in terms of masculine and feminine energies. The problem is when society then puts agendas onto them, and it messes everything up. But yeah, I definitely feel as though what I truly feel, and as I say, this isn't judging any of the divine masculine that might be watching us here, because we love you, but it's as though birthing this divine feminine age shouldn't just be our responsibility as women. And it feels quite, the analogy I'm being given here is it's like giving birth and no one being there to help you or stroke your back or tell you can do it. Not enough. And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. I think it's just the deep wound that the masculine carries. But again, going back to how we affect the change, over many lifetimes, we have been the men. So I suppose it keeps coming back to us doing the work. I know I got told years ago that, oh, you're used to being a man, Amanda, in previous lives. You can do that standing on your head. It's much more, come in this time and do it as a woman and have children and have a family and then try and work on top of it. It's like, oh, I'm not sure I can do that, but I'm learning to do it. But so I think it goes very deep, doesn't it? It's all to do with the wounding. I'm being shown by Metatron here the battlefields across the world. I'm talking historic battlefields, actually. So whatever country you're in, it's almost as though there's healing work needed to be done at the battle sites, as well as obviously present day. But I'm being drawn back in history to places in, well, every country on earth, really. But for some reason, I'm being drawn to France. Maybe that's just because I'm near France. But the land is still wounded. The land is still carrying the blood, basically, that has been shed. And so until the land heals upon which the bodies lay, we are struggling to stand up and birth the new. So it feels as though it's all very tied in with planetary healing as well as our own healing. And the thing that I do believe in the power of love to heal, the power of light, the power of nature, the passage of time, divine intervention a little bit from time to time to help us, but they're not going to do it all for us. So, yeah.
I was thinking of so many things as you were talking, but I'm going to go back to thinking about Princess Diana, because I think it fits with a lot of what we're talking about. Because right before you talked about France, I was thinking it's too interesting to me that she died in Paris, and I hope this will all connect, because I'm thinking of so many things right now. That recently I saw a film also. It's called Lee. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it's a Kate Winslet was deeply involved in the production, and she stars in this, and it's about a photographer named Lee. And somebody will know in the chat, I can't remember her last name. She was a photographer during World War II, and she had been also a model working in Europe through the 20s and 30s, worked with very famous photographers. And she became a photographer kind of in the middle age of her life, when she could no longer work as a model. So she goes to Europe and photographs it in the midst of World War II. Is one of the first on the scene at a liberation of one of the concentration camps, or one of the first on the scene when Berlin falls back to the Allies. But there's a very haunting scene when she's in occupied France, and there's a scene in which a woman who was one of the collaborators is having her head shaved. And I don't know why I thought of that also, that there is this real, through every stage that we go through as a society, there are these powerful picked portraits of women, or unique women who find themselves in different situations where it's through the feminine representation, or a feminine body, that we learn so many lessons. Because I mean, the imagery in that film, it was so powerful to see, through the eyes of this feminine photographer who was photographing a woman who had been blamed as a collaborator. And, but at the same time, the story of Princess Diana also allows us to see a woman who was struggling on a very public stage to go through so much of the feminine experience, and to talk about not having a male presence there to be the protector, right? She was at the very end, right, being pursued by men, and died as a result of just being in this situation where I'm sure she never imagined she'd be.
Yeah, it's interesting. She was pursued by men. Yeah. I know I can say this because I've actually channeled this with her, but she also pursued men. It's this thing about we like to, it's this thing about saint and sinner. We can't help ourselves as a species that we put people up onto a pedestal. And believe you me, I'm her biggest fan. Okay. So I love her. But in the last channeling that I did with her, I don't know, 6 months ago, she was the one that brought up the fact that she wanted to help heal the sisterhood wound. And it's not a case of who was unfaithful first or anything like this. It was just, she was like, Amanda, I had my moments with men, including married men, and it's not judging it. It's just saying that I did this, and wanting to set the record straight that I wasn't just this saintly figure, that I was, as a woman, like all women, we have many different sides to us. And funnily enough, I'll go back to Diana in a minute, but getting ready for today, I had a really strong energy of Lilith around as well. And, think about Lilith and Eve. It's like nobody ever wants to talk about Lilith, because Lilith is like this, scary type of woman or archetype of woman. But Eve is much more presentable and nice. And we can talk about Eve more than we can Lilith. So I think Diana was really just trying to show there were many different aspects of me. She did amazing, good stuff, and deservedly is remembered for that, but equally wanted to say, hey, I was also flawed. Don't put me up on that pedestal. I think this thing also about you're saying she was pursued by men, and then I said, but she also pursued men, because what's coming to me here, because I do feel her energy, is she's showing me her father, and I believe she loved her father, but it was a very complicated relationship. And that search for like a father's love, where, because I think from memory, I think he married again, didn't he? There was a stepmother. So it's this energy of always craving her father's love, which felt as though it was a little bit out of her reach, or not manifested to the degree that she felt she needed it, particularly with regards to the relationship she had with Charles, etc. But yeah, I felt her around since I connected with you, Anne, actually, because I haven't channeled her for a while. And I did have this weird thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. And I knew I was coming on to do this show with you and Natalie. And because I hadn't channeled her for a while, I was in my car, just driving my daughter somewhere. And in my own mind, I was just thinking, yeah, you know, should really channel Diana again. I wonder whether she's still around. And I looked at the car in front of me. I can't tell you what the registration number was, because I would be giving away somebody's private details. But what I can tell you is that the first two letters of the car in front of me was the initials of one of her sons. The letters at the end of the registration plate were an abbreviation of mother. And in the middle of that was 61. It was also an Audi convertible, and she used to drive an Audi convertible. And I thought, oh my God, the mother of one of her boys. And I thought, but I don't understand 61. I thought, I'm sure that's Diana giving me a sign. So I got home and I researched, and of course she was born in 1961. Wow. So it was just such one of those lovely moments where you just think, yeah, she's very accessible, because effectively what she was saying is, yeah, of course I'm here, Amanda. You know, as she is for anybody really that calls her to help them, particularly with family matters, grief, relationship difficulties, or just trying to get into their heart. The other thing that happened yesterday was there was, do you remember James Hewitt, who was one of her lovers, basically? And he was on the TV, he was on breakfast TV or something. I don't watch a lot of TV. I watch hardly any, to be honest. And I've not seen James Hewitt interviewed for years. And he was being interviewed because he was doing some sort of, I don't know, work in Ukraine linked into helping charity work, basically. And he was asked about her, and he was quite dignified in what he said back. But I felt her energy straight away, and what she was saying to me, and I've never thought of this before. She was saying, it's so, she didn't use the word weird, but weird to see people that you've loved aging, you know, because you have left the earthly plane. And of course, she left when she was, what was it, in her 30s, 40s, still a young woman, in her prime, really. And he still looks good. In fact, the word she used for him was rakish. I had to look up what rakish means. I think it means quite debonair, you know, quite elegant still. But it was just this thing of like, well, it's just weird. It's just strange seeing somebody that you've been so connected with years later, decades later, because of course they're aging, but you're not in spirit. You're not. So I have actually, if you wanted me to, it might be quite nice, unless you've got any questions, but I haven't got this spray anymore, but we could maybe reintroduce it at some point, but it's not on sale at the moment. But a couple of years ago, we made this spray, which was dedicated to Diana. It's called Queen of Hearts, England's Rose, Memories and Remembrance. And I sprayed it earlier, and I just felt her energy quite quickly. So I could do that and just see what happens, what messages come through, and unless you've got any other questions.
That would be amazing. And just Issy H in the chat said she was 36 when she passed.
36. Right. Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right. So let me just, I'm going to spray this then and just see what we get. Okay. Go, Princess Diana. So I'm hearing the words eternally loved, and what a gift it is to be eternally loved and remembered. And there's a humbleness coming from her with regards to gratitude and thanks for the people that still remember her and are inspired by her, and that hold her flame alive, really. But she's also about taking you to yourself and the people that you've lost and the ones that stay alive in our heart forever, really. And she's saying it works both ways, that in spirit, the people that have been left behind through death are alive in my heart, is what she's saying. So those that we've loved and lost, the portal of the heart contains the chambers through which we can meet them and connect with them and feel into the times that were shared. If happy and positive, to remember and rekindle those special moments that only you know, that mean something to you, where there is healing needed via the connection, to ask for that, and that she can help bring the medicine that the soul needs for whatever wound is carried in the heart by either party. A remembrance that the rainbow bridge is always open, and that the one that you've loved and lost is still there, but yet just slightly out of reach, but still with you in different form. I also get the energy of her, particularly in my country at the moment, not exclusively, she's for anybody wherever they are around the world, but great concern for the state of the nation at the moment, and wanting to open up the portals within Avalon, which will help not just England and UK, but ripple out to the wider world. The portals within Avalon, for whatever reason, she's showing me them as being quite dry and barren at the moment, even though many people work and are invested in holding the codes of the land there. There is a leak, is what she's talking about. So it's almost as though whatever healing is put into the land, it's leaking from the land. So it's plugging that, putting it in a crude way, for England and the Isles to rise again, and they will, is what she's saying. This is not just true for the British Isles, but for many countries around the world. It's as though many countries are feeling a sense of loss of what they have known themselves to be up to this point in time, and that history and tradition and culture is important, as is moving forward and taking the best of the past and the best of the future, and just holding the faith that we will get through these days with God's grace, with each other, with staying in our heart, with being united and fighting for what is just and fair, for reaching out to each other and extending the hand of friendship. And more than anything, I just ask you to go into your heart space and allow Diana's light to enter there and just shine a spotlight on whatever needs healing or requiring attention or highlighting. She's also showing me the yearning for love that is within all, because most are wounded on this planet. And the love we may have for a partner, the love we may have for a child, a friend, an animal, but also the love that we have for the Godhead, the universe, each other, and that in each other we can actually see the Godhead. And it's this yearning that mankind has, and the loss that they feel with regards to the separation from all that is good and holy and sacred and loving. And she's showing me a chain that feels quite broken, but which can be restitched, rechained. And this chain is not one that is a shackle, but is like an umbilical cord between you and the divine. And through that flows the codes of love and the frequency of harmony and balance and new earth. I send you my grace. I send you my love. Thank you for remembering me. I'm always here. I'm around the lands, the people. I'm here whenever you wish to call upon me to strengthen the bonds of kinship and the fellowship of the heart. Take a deep breath in and out, and open your eyes if they were closed.
That was amazing. Thank you for that. Can I ask a question that you may have already asked Diana before, but
Yes.
I've often wondered this, because anybody that was alive in the time where she passed, anything around her was an absolute circus. Once she left Charles, or once that divorce happened, and she was dating, and this woman could not get away. The paparazzi were following her, and I remember the tabloids in Australia. It was her on the cover every week if she was on a boat with somebody, all of that.
Yeah.
And I think of this from my personal perspective in terms of my beliefs. I believe that we come onto this earth with a plan, and I believe that we have a solid entry date and exit date, and everything in between is up to us, whether we are able to sort of stick to the plan that we made before we came here, or whether there are certain lessons that we're not able to get through.
Yeah.
Did Diana need to leave at that early point in her life? Because 36 is so young. Did she need to leave at that point because she would be more effective doing the work that she's doing from the other side?
100%. 100%. And also, I know in earlier channelings that I've done with her, it came through so strongly that this was a soul contract, a very important soul contract to open the hearts of many people. I think history, you know, when we look back, it can sometimes negate, or we can forget the depth of emotion that was triggered by her death. And you look at the photographs and you just think, oh yeah, lots of people crying, lots of people leaving flowers. But oh my God, I mean, having lived through it, you know, I'm on record of saying I wailed for a week, and I really did. The tears just kept coming and coming. I couldn't stop it. I was on holiday as well at the time. It was just And I wasn't the only one. And it was not the media that did that, because I wasn't even in the country. It was just came from nowhere. And lots of people, of course, say the same thing. And of course, we were grieving for her, but we were also grieving for all of the loss and all of the stuff that we had pushed down over this lifetime, maybe other lifetimes. So you have these moments, don't you, in the world, which are watershed moments, which bring a huge heart awakening and kinship and fellowship with each other and a coming together. I mean, you had JFK. I wasn't, well, was I alive? Maybe I was alive, but I was certainly a child when he died. There haven't been that many instances like that before or since, but they come from time to time for a very specific purpose, which is to awaken hearts. But equally, she obviously had a contract herself. She had things that she was meant to be learning and did. And, you know, it's interesting with regards to, of course, Charles and Camilla. I've always found Diana to talk about forgiveness. There was a big channeling I did, which was all about forgiveness, and absolutely no feeling of malice left, or judgment, or hatred, or, you know, just forgiveness with regards to what that was all about. And I'm talking about forgiveness, particularly with regards to Camilla, actually. I've always felt like there's still a love there for Charles, actually. I know some people don't agree with me on that, but that's what I've always felt from her. But, you know, especially with regards to Camilla now being the queen, and it's like, you know, it's almost like an energy of like, well, sending us some good luck because she probably needs it, you know, that type of feeling. But yeah, definitely a soul contract, Natalie. Yeah.
This is going to end up being a question for you, Anne, because I remember where I was the day all of this happened. It was a Sunday in Australia. I was getting ready to go to a retail job that I had, and I yelled out to my boyfriend because I was at his family's house, and I was in the bathroom, and I must have yelled, "Can you bring me breakfast or something?" Because I am not a morning person. And normally he would turn up and he would bring me toast or some a cup of tea or something. And he yelled at me, "No." And I went, "Why are you being mean to me? I'm up in the morning. What's going on?" And I walked into his bedroom, and he and his mum were sitting on his bed watching the first reports come through about the accident. And the whole energy of the day was very, very, very strange and very somber. And where I worked was on Burke Street in Melbourne. And anyone that's been to Melbourne or lives in Melbourne knows it's the busiest street in Melbourne, in Victoria. And so I get to work and everything is dead. It was like the whole state stopped moving. And then people would come in and "Hi, how are you?" And they're saying to me, "Why is it so quiet? Like, what am I missing?" And we said, "Did you hear about the accident?" And so we're telling them what's gone on. And people would sort of clutch their chest and say, "I have to get home." It was as if they were hearing about somebody that was a part of their own family being injured. And at that point, we didn't know that she had passed. And when it was probably halfway through the workday, it was only a 5-hour day on a Sunday, my boyfriend called and said she died. I said, "What?" And it was like time stood still, and there was this swell of emotion even throughout Australia, which is part of the monarchy, that affected everybody. It didn't matter whether you were pro-monarchy or not. Everybody felt this loss. And I'm curious as to how it was for you guys in America, because you're not part of the monarchy. So the royals are something that some of you watch, but I don't think the effect is the same.
So with Princess Diana, it was as impactful in the United States, I think, as in a Commonwealth nation, right? That it was so shocking. I remember still where I was. I was, as you know, Natalie, I spend a lot of time driving between my parents' house where they live and home. We were on our way, I think it was back home, in the car, and heard the news she'd been in an accident. And I mean, it was exactly the same thing where you're just like, what? Because first of all, I was thinking, what was she doing? Why was she there? And then everybody just assumed, well, but of course she's going to be fine. So when that news came that she had died, it was so shocking. Same thing here. And we went to spontaneously, I don't even remember when it was, the next night or whatever. We went to the beach only to discover, sort of to just think about Diana, because we had friends visiting. And all these people were there and just doing the same thing. People with pictures of her and candles. And it was just spontaneous. I've never experienced anything like that since then.
No, I don't think there has been anything. I was in Spain, actually. So I wasn't actually in the UK, which was very strange because as a British person, I just wanted to be back home. And we had a week in Spain, but in Spain, it was the same as well. Walking down the streets and all the florists would have tributes in the window. And I watched the funeral in a Spanish bar with a load of Spanish men, actually, and it was just deathly silence. Everyone was just watching it with a real reverence and respect. I think it was a very sacred moment, and definitely an awakening moment, which happens from time to time on this planet. Yeah.
And it was a similar thing when Elvis died. And I wasn't born when Elvis died. He passed 2 years before I was born. But I will say I was dating a very well-known musician in Australia, and we had a night out one day. It was the first time I met his family, and we had a little bit to drink. And so I was talking about my favorite Elvis song at the time, which was a cover he did at one of his concerts of Never Been to Spain. And because I'm there and I'm drunk and I'm talking about this song, they all start remembering where they were when Elvis died. And it's similar in terms of stories that you remember every detail and every moment of where you were and how it affected you. And that conversation, they were going around the table going, where were you? Where were you? And I'm sitting there thinking, don't ask me. Because then I had to say, I wasn't born yet. And then they were all upset because I was so much younger than them. So thanks. But it's just, there are these people that for some reason it pulls everyone together.
Yes, and I've only been to America a couple of times, but I've got such a pull to go to Graceland.
You should do it.
Yeah,
and
I can't. I mean, I do love Elvis, but it's like I really know I need to go. So, have you been there? I mean, can you feel the energy there?
I went. And the house itself, I was disappointed we couldn't go upstairs. We had a brief conversation before we went live, and I've just finished reading Lisa Marie's book that she finished with Riley, and they have kept the upstairs very private. And it turns out that Lisa, when she wanted to feel close to Elvis, would go to Graceland and they would all pile into his bed and kind of have this family time. And if they didn't leave before the house opened for viewings, they would stay up there all day and just wait until everybody left for them to be able to go. And I didn't feel a whole lot walking through the house. Where it affected me was standing at his grave.
Is that within the grounds of the house? Yeah, because I'm feeling the grounds. I'm feeling the grounds because I've heard the house is, it's not a palace or anything, is it? It's not like Versailles, but the grounds. Yeah.
Yeah, that to me was really special. And when you go out into some of the stable areas, they've got some of his outfits and things like that. They were offices. And so there are things that are visible. Like you can still see how the setup worked, but it's a little more museum-ish. But the grounds for me were what really affected me. Is he going to get upset with you that that you said that about his house?
Yeah, I said to Natalie that because obviously we've been talking for a little while now, and I thought that he probably would want his to be center stage in another podcast another time, because I have channeled him, and I have to say, Natalie, always struck by his grace. His manners, just really impeccable manners, and he always calls me mom. Is it mom, ma'am? My pronunciation, British pronunciation, but there's just this old-fashioned manners, which I just think is really lovely. And actually, it's like the divine masculine type energy. So I really love sitting in his energy. And I do remember the first time he ever came to visit, as it were, because he's got a bit of a sense of humor as well. You know, the white rhine-studded white suit. And I think he was talking about his galactic heritage, because there's a galactic heritage there. And it was like, he said, yeah, it's like my spacesuit. And it does, every time I see it now in those, it's like, yeah, it looks like a spacesuit. But yeah, what a genius. I mean, again, a different type of person from Diana, but somebody who just came in and pretty much shattered the status quo, you know, in terms of pre-Elvis and then after Elvis. It just changed everything. Yeah, I love him.
Well, with that sort of big personality and thinking about his humor, I think this reminded me to look at the time, and we are almost coming to the end. So we should probably start to ask our questions. And our first question is perfect for this. Amanda, what makes you laugh?
Myself a lot of the time, actually. I think that's a very British thing. It's a self-deprecating type of humor. And yeah, I think the British sense of humor is often on themselves, actually, just the ridiculousness of things. And I don't know, lots of people make me laugh. And there are many comedians over the years who I hold very dear to my heart. But Ricky Gervais would be up there, actually. I love him. Ronnie Barker. Oh, so many. But yeah, I laugh at myself a lot. I think people that don't have a sense of humor, they tend to be the people I can't get on with. You know, I try to get on with everybody, but if you haven't got a sense of humor and you can't take the mickey out of yourself, that's a bit of a red flag to me. So yeah.
You said if you can't take the mickey out of yourself?
Oh,
Have
is that
you
a
not
British
heard
saying?
that?
You not heard
No.
that saying?
We
No,
say it in
what does that
Australia as well. Like
I'll
if
say the
you're
way that-
self-deprecating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Amanda, who was your biggest spiritual influence?
Jesus. I would go straight to him. Yeah.
Okay, well, that was an easy one.
Yes.
I feel like we should have asked a better question. But I like
Ask
that.
another one. Yeah.
So the next one is, what would be your advice to people on how to transcend fear?
Oh, well, I just know from experience, and it is a cliche, but you've just got to do it anyway. You have to push through it. If you don't confront the things that you're frightened of, they just become bigger and bigger monsters in the room. And, you know, I am somebody who from time to time suffers from depression, anxiety. People always say, oh, no, I can't believe that of you. But yeah, it's true. And I did mention this recently that I think it was when menopause started to kick in, I really got quite a bit of anxiety coming back over the last few years. And it never had a full-blown panic attack, but it was getting quite unpleasant. And we were going on holiday to Switzerland, and my daughters really wanted to go in the cable car. And I was just like, there's no way I'm ever going to get in this cable car. And I pushed myself effectively into it and started to have a bit of an anxiety attack in the cable car. And then I laughed at myself. I thought, what is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen, it was only a cable car with me, John, and the girls. I thought the worst that can happen is I'm going to have to lie on the floor of this bloody cable car, and John's going to have to sit on top of me so I don't jump out, because, you know, the thing with panic is you want to get out of it. And at that moment, as soon as I just laughed a bit, and also grinned and bared it. And I've got photographs of myself in this cable car, like, oh, you know, not really having a good time at all. But after I did it, I couldn't wait to get back in it again the second day. And it's the truth. We just have to confront our fears, unfortunately, and go for it. And I think that's where having a guide such as Metatron, who usually gives you a loving push in the back, can help. So... But I haven't got any magic technique. It is just a case of jumping in, really, and seeing if you can swim, and then realizing you actually can. Yeah.
And what is the best piece of spiritual advice you've ever been given?
Okay, I'm just going to think about that one. There's many. I'm going to say 2. I'm going to cheat and say 2. One of the things that I try to live by is do as you would be done to. I think that's really important. But the other piece of guidance Metatron gave me, and I have mentioned this before, but I really try and hold on to it, is get out of the way. And what he meant by that was it's tied into fear, actually, which is that I don't know if I can do it. Am I good enough? Am I going to fail? And this thing about just get out of the way and do it. Because it's actually ego that's talking when you're talking like that. And actually, if you go into your heart and your higher self and trust and allow that to run the show rather than that other voice, that is where we need to get to. And it was just that thing about, Amanda, just get out of the way. You're meant to be doing what you're doing. You need to be talking to whoever you're meant to be talking to, doing this, get out of the way. And he said it in quite a blunt way. And some people might have been offended by that, but I wasn't. I was just like, no, he's right. He's right. Just get out of the way. So.
All right. Well, I cannot believe, am I reading the time right? It's really to the end. This went so fast, and I've just loved having you on, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, both of you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And we've had some people in the chat asking about whether you have distributors for your sprays in places like Canada or elsewhere.
We have a couple of distributors in the States, and there is one in Canada. They don't always have the full range, but on my website, which is angeliccelestialcolours.co.uk, bit of a mouthful, I know, right at the bottom of the homepage, it says distributors. And if you click on that, it comes up with a few. But we do actually post everywhere around the world as well, with the exception of South Africa, I'm afraid. We can't get them in with the post there, but yeah.
That explains it. I saw someone's comment saying they had someone there who could get them the sprays. They've got a spray connection.
Yes, yes.
And I will put the link to your website and everything in the description below as soon as we're done with the live, so people can find you, and I'll have your YouTube link and everything else there.
Thank you. And I wish you continued great success with this show as well. You have some really interesting people on, and I will be watching going forward definitely as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And everyone who's here, make sure you're subscribed to Natalie Sady's YouTube channel so that you'll see announcements about our upcoming shows. We don't have the next one scheduled at the moment, but we will be doing that very quickly, I'm sure. Anything? Oh, you can find me later also on, I'm going to be on a show later called History in the Stars on High Vibe TV or on the Leo King's YouTube channel.
Yeah, shout out to David. We all love David.
Yeah.
I'll have links to all of it attached below.
All right. Well, I think that's it. And you will have to come back, Amanda, because I've got a whole other list of questions that we need to discuss.
That would be lovely. Thank you very much,
Thank
ladies.
you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.